So the last several weeks in this season of Lent, we've been focusing on our relationship with God, our relationships with each other, and with all of creation. And the one way we've talked about that has been through this word covenant. Covenant that is a promise that God has made to God's people. Covenant is a symbol of the relationship that God is offering to humanity. Covenant is this avenue through which the people can have relationship with God. Unfortunately, the law and the covenants, instead of remaining avenues, they became barriers. The law specifically was a way in which those in power, the religious leaders, could say, here's a way to get to God, but you've got to jump this hurdle first. If you want to be in relationship with God, you need to be made righteous first. You need to make yourself righteous, and then you can have contact with God. Then you can have knowledge of God. Then a few weeks ago, we heard of this promise from Jeremiah that a new covenant was coming. And the new covenant wasn't going to be quite like the old covenant because in the new covenant, the law was written directly on the hearts of the people. People knew God directly. Every person, from the least to the greatest, knew God directly and personally. This covenant was going to be different. So Jesus, when he's breaking the bread and offering the cup, repeats this promise of the new covenant and says, in my death, this new covenant will be enacted. So this is what happens in Jesus' death and resurrection. The new covenant is enacted. And what this means is the way it works changes. We don't make ourselves righteous and then get to know God. God comes to us. We have free access to God. And out of that love, out of that deep connection with the one who made us, we live into righteous living. We live into abundant lives. On one hand, when Jesus died, Jesus went to that one last place that kept a barrier between us because God was immortal and we were mortal. And on the cross, God died. God went to that place that only we humans could go, so that that barrier of death was no longer there. On the other hand, then Jesus rose, and the power of death, the power of sin itself, was broken in half. God changed the way it worked so that we would have free and easy access to God without any hurdles to cross. God's love was free for the taking and is free for the taking. It says in Romans that it was while we were enemies that God came and reconciled us to God's self. We didn't make ourselves righteous and then God said, okay, now let's get this thing going. We were still enemies with God when God came to us and made things right through Jesus. That's why the scriptures proclaim that neither death nor life, angels or demons, the present or the future, nor any powers, neither height nor depth, nor anything else in all creation can separate us, can get between us and God. Amen? And the clearest example of that in the scriptures is that the earth shook, and the curtain that was in the temple that had separated the people from the holiest of holies, the place where God was said to show up, was torn in two. There was no longer that curtain between us. The problem is, I think we still create curtains for ourselves. Maybe we feel curtains that people put on us. Maybe we put curtains on other people. So I invite you to think about it. What curtains do you put on yourself in your relationship with God? What curtains do you put on others? Anybody want to help me pull this thing out? Any volunteers want to help? Yeah? Alan, thank you. You want to come up here a little bit? Thank you. You guys want to get this corner up here? You want to go over there? Pull that one out? Yeah. What gets in between us? Messiness. My life is just too messy. I know what my past is filled with. I know what my past is filled with, and God doesn't want that. All of these deal with worthiness, our sense of worth in front of God. I know what my past is filled with. No, I can't go there. I don't know how. I don't know how to pray like so-and-so. I do not know how to tell stories like so-and-so. I don't know how to read the Bible like so-and-so. I don't know how to sing or play the piano like so-and-so. Or maybe I don't know how at all. I don't know how to read the Bible. I don't know how to sing. I don't know how to worship. I certainly don't know how to pray. Do you put that barrier in between you and God? You don't know how to do those things? Or all or nothing. You know, sometimes we get this sense that to be a follower of Jesus, we've got to be all in. We have to do everything. We have to do the prayers and the songs and the Bible reading and the small group and the service and everything. And then we say, well, I don't have time for all that. So why do anything? It's easier just to do nothing. We get this idea that we have to be all or nothing, and those are our two choices, and we certainly don't have the time to be all. I don't give enough money. I'm not worthy because I don't give enough. These barriers we put on ourselves for whatever reason. We put them on ourselves, and God is tearing them in half. None of this needs to stand between us and God. None of it. And so we tear it in half. Let's tear this thing. God has torn it in half. Amen? Amen. Thank you. Let's just throw these down right here. There you go. Throw it down. Amen. Brothers and sisters, the curtain has been torn in two. There is nothing that is keeping you from receiving the life-giving love of God that has reached to us no matter where we were and where we are. Receive that life-giving love. Walk in the newness of life, the newness of resurrection, and be empowered and challenged to break down those walls between any other person that in which there's a curtain. Reach out in love in the same way God has reached out to you and to all of us. Christ is risen. Christ is risen. Amen.